Hey, good to have you with us on the Randy Karraker Show on STL Sports Central, presented by DraftKings, where the crown is yours. There's Matthew Rocchio.
Had to be ready for the point.
Yeah, there you go. What's your sweatshirt say there?
I got my Louis sweatshirt on.
Very nice. Well done. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Great to have you with us, kids, and we'll be here until the end of the show. We might end a little bit early. I got a Christmas party to get to this afternoon. So this is different than when we were back in the radio days and we had dead air if we left. So they allow us to leave here. This is good. Good deal. Happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays to you, Randy Karraker. Look at the tree looks fantastic. We got a little bit of the foliage right in the bottom of the frame. You got a little mistletoe over your head. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Very, very festive. We're enjoying it. We aren't as festive today as the old redhead Dustin May is, though. Jeff Passan reporting that he'll get $12.5 million this year. And then the Cards and May have a mutual option for 2027 that would be worth $20 million if both sides deem they should exercise it. Matthew, I would venture to say that there is a 0% chance of both sides picking up the $20 million option for 2027. If May pitches really well, he'll be worth more than $20 million. And if he doesn't pitch really well, the Cardinals wouldn't pick up the $20 million for 2027. So I'm looking at a one-year deal for $12.5 million.
Yeah, and I do wonder though if there is if maybe the reason you do the mutual option, because to your point, everyone's going to be honest about this. Dustin May and his group are thinking this. The Cardinals thinking this too, which is if he's good enough to get this option, we're not going to take it. And he's thinking I could probably make a little bit more money, or I wouldn't want to be with the Cardinals going into probably another year of maybe not making the playoffs if I am a great pitcher. But I do think there's a potential needle to thread where a team in July, if we are getting and let's throw up our stats from earlier in the week when we broke it down, if let's say he does give them this 135 ERA plus, average that he was giving these first 5 years of his career. If he does that through July, I think there is a world where a team says, okay, maybe we can get him to buy that option with us, and $20 million would be a pretty good price for him. Maybe he could get 25 on the market with the way he's pitching now, but maybe he takes 20 and rolls with us. So I think there is a small little window where it maybe does add a little bit to his value in July if everything works out perfect, which is why not? I mean, it's a little thing. It's not going to cost you any money no matter what happens. No. Why not add a little potential sweetener to the new team that gets him? I think it's a great piece of movement.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of factors that go into this. Number one, the lack of knowledge about a lockout, which we probably won't know because the lockout would start, I think, at the end of December, right around this time next year. And the option would have to be picked up by both sides prior to the implementation of a lockout by owners. So I think that's one issue. And then the other part of this, as you mentioned, would be the trade deadline. And if the Cardinals are seeing great things from Liam Doyle or Matthews at the deadline, then they might think, okay, this is the best opportunity for us to get something back in return and plug that guy into the rotation, whether it be one of those two or somebody else. May might be their most valuable asset at the trading deadline as well. And it's especially because he's pitched in a couple of postseasons. So I think it's a good deal for both sides. I have no problem with the Cardinals paying him $12.5 million. Last year they paid Miles Michaelis $18 million or whatever. And I think May will be at least as good as Michaelis was last year. So I think that's a good deal. And if he pitches well enough to earn $20 million in 27, that means either he's pitched well for the Cardinals in 2026 or he's gotten them something so that somebody else would pick up that $20 million option in 2027. I don't see much downside here.
And again, there's no such thing as a bad one-year deal, but if there are people who want to grade this based on the money, he was projected by a lot of the people to get 2 for 26. So the fact that they got him 1 for less than even half of that, I mean, it was supposed to be 13 annual for 2 years. So obviously they sweetened it with the mutual, but to our point, everyone in that room is having, not maybe having the conversation that we're having, but everyone in the room knows everything that we're saying right now. And so, you give him a little bit of a boost because he's maybe not getting the flat cash he expected. And there's that small chance that it gets picked up. and everyone's happy. The team that gets him, if they do pick it up, they're happy paying him 20. He's happy that he's getting 32.5 over these 2 years instead of the projected 26.
By the way, did you see his quote from a couple of years ago about wearing number 85 with the Dodgers? He said, "I will wear number 85 my whole career. Surely it's available no matter where I play."
What are you? Got to be you're kidding me, right? That's not a real quote.
No.
That's a real quote.
Funny. Yeah, isn't that great?
What are the chances that he would actually sign with the one team where he can't wear 85?
Exactly. Right. The only other team would have been his LA Rams, right?
Oh,
Jack
okay.
Youngblood?
Okay. Are you going to be in on the welcome Zoom that they do with him? Are you going to be in on it where you ask him that question? If that went into his consideration, if it was hard to sign on the dotted line when he realized he wouldn't get to wear 85 again?
Well, I guarantee he didn't know. I'll ask him, but I guarantee he didn't know.
I'll be so happy if in that moment that's the first time he's realizing it and he's like, crap. No, I didn't think about that one. I mean, I guess in this offseason they won't issue him a jersey number before.
Yeah, there'll be a good number available for him though, right? They can give him 39. That'll be available.
That was a bad pitcher number. I didn't like
except
that.
for the Mad Hungarian.
Oh, that's good. And I guess pre-Steven Jackson, fine, but now 39 in my head. That's a running back number. That's a damn good running back number. Thank you very much.
That is a good running back number.
Is 58 available? Just have him look in the mirror.
Chris Roycroft, I think, is still on the roster at the moment.
Oh, darn it. We're not going to be able to switch that around.
Yeah. Craig Lewis, Merry Christmas, you old building and loan. So good for George Bailey. Thank you, Craig. Appreciate it.
Nicely done, Craig. Nicely done. I'm gonna watch It's a Wonderful Life with an open mind this year, Randy. After because as a kid I hated it. And part of the context there is that my parents are very old school movie watchers, and so my childhood I was having to watch a lot of movies in black and white. And when you're a 12-year-old child, there's a point where you just go, you know what? I think every movie in this medium kind of sucks at this point. And so I was probably a little bit biased. I'd probably watched one too many black and white movies with my parents that year. And I really made a hard turn against George Bailey and It's a Wonderful Life. I always liked Clarence. Clarence was always a character I really vibed with. I never really liked the main character of It's a Wonderful Life. And so that I'm old, I never liked George Bailey. He was a sad sack for good reason. Obviously, his life's getting torn apart in front of him. For Christ's sake, I mean, I can't blame the guy now. Yeah, I mean,
he needed a break.
Yeah, he did. There's a run on the bank and everything. I understand now. And so now, as an older man who's much more open-minded about certain things, this Christmas I've decided I'm going to rewatch It's a Wonderful Life and give it the proper due as one of the greatest movies that's ever been made, because that's what everyone says. But I've been biased my entire life. And to Craig Lewis and to your points, I'm going to try it again. I'm going to give it a real shot this time, and I'm not going to be biased because my mom made me watch 4 Katharine Hepburn movies in the month before.
I think that you need, and I want to hear after this is over, if you think that he got dealt a bad hand.
I mean, I already know enough from watching the movie multiple times as a kid and hating it. I already know that he gets dealt a bad hand. But that's why, like, for a long time, my favorite joke in Family Guy was they did one of the flashbacks there. And the flashback, I think Quagmire's pissed off, and he walks through the scene on the bridge, and he just pushes George Bailey off the bridge. Well, he's like, Clarence, I just want to live, Clarence. And then Quagmire, like, just walks over and pushes him off the bridge. And for years, that was the funniest joke to me because George Bailey just annoyed the crap out of me. But I'm going to give it another chance. Craig Lewis's tweet made me realize that.
Good. By the way, we just got word that Brady Cook will start again for the Jets on Sunday. So let's go, Brady. So good for him.
Did you see the video of his parents reacting in the stands to his touchdown?
Yeah, isn't that great?
Isn't that not just the most genuine thing you've ever seen in your entire life?
It was fantastic. And he has kind of that it factor. He might not wind up being a great NFL quarterback, but we saw it at Mizzou. He's charismatic. He's a guy that players, I'm sure, want to follow. His skill set's okay, not the best, but Brady's wasn't the best either. Not to compare he and Brady, but in college, Brady didn't have the best skill set. That's just a fact. And I would think that the skills could be enhanced. And I think that he can be a serviceable NFL quarterback. I think that you have to build around him with good talent. I don't think that that he's a guy that's going to elevate talent around him, but I think Brady Cook is a guy that you can win with, maybe not because of, but you can win with.
Have you, in going back to all those years of covering the NFL and things like that, did anyone ever kind of break down like developing arm strength and like something like whether or not like developing a deep ball as an NFL quarterback, for a guy, when we talk about as a guy moves into like his 4th or 5th year, how much of an aspect of that is raw arm strength and how much of an aspect of that becomes ball placement and kind of those kind of things, picking your spots? Because to your point, like Brady doesn't have the most dominant arm coming out of Michigan, and yet he was hitting Randy Moss for 60-yard bombs multiple times in that 2007 season. And part of that was because he was wide open. The other part was because he had to get the ball 50 yards downfield. So I've just kind of wondered, have you anybody ever commented on, how guys kind of, break the mold with their expectations when it comes to things like arm strength?
What's interesting is there's guys that come into the league. Lamar Jackson is a perfect example. They just throw it as hard as they can off the bat. Lamar Jackson has become maybe the best touch quarterback in the league right now. Some guys, and this is not an affront to John Elway, some guys never do learn the touch thing. But then on the other end of the spectrum, it's interesting. Some guys have no chance of their arm ever being any more than a noodle. Steve Walsh, who was a Ram for a couple of games in 2006, his arm was never good. But Montana started off with not a great arm, and then all of a sudden he gets Jerry Rice, and it's got to improve. And his arm strength actually improved between his rookie year in 1979 and when he got Rice going in 1985. So, it's possible. There's so many quarterbacks now that work with Tom House, the old major league pitcher, and there are things with your motion that can improve your parent arm strength. So,
Peyton talked a lot about that, like rise he had when he would go to throw the ball. That was something he developed. I think it was early on with Tom Moore when he got to the Colts, and it kind of was another thing where it took his arm, perceivably his arm strength. His arm didn't get stronger, but it was a mechanical change that allowed him to kind of compact more power into every throw, and it changed a little bit how his ball was.
Yeah. So to your point, I think there are things that Brady Cook can do, and he doesn't have a bad arm, but I think there are things that he could do to have even a bigger arm. I will take accuracy over arm strength every single day of the week, though. To me, that's the big key that a lot of guys are missing. And that's why I was stunned when a guy like Anthony Richardson got drafted by the Colts, because he had never displayed accuracy. Now we have a couple of guys that have actually improved their completion percentage over their college days in Josh Allen and Justin Herbert, and people think everybody can do it. Not everybody can do it. It's not easy. It's almost impossible to teach somebody how to throw more accurately.
A great example of that, and not a lot of people, because he was such a good prospect and he was going to such a bad team, people didn't really focus on this, but a big thing in Matthew Stafford coming out of Georgia was that his completion percentage at Georgia was 57%. And that wasn't a good Georgia team. That was a very run-heavy SEC at the time. Matthew Stafford's career NFL completion percentage is 63%. So, I mean, that right there is a great example of a guy who had one mark, his accuracy, and people were like, no one has ever succeeded in the NFL with these college numbers before, and yet he broke the mold and obviously developed as a passer.
And interestingly, until Montana came along, passing completion percentage was never a thing. Terry Bradshaw threw virtually as many touchdowns as interceptions. Namath threw more interceptions than touchdowns. Jim Hart was that way. And if you threw back in the day, if you completed 50% of your passes, you were doing okay. Now, a guy that's completing 50% of his passes can't even play. And really, 63 is kind of the low mark. And you got guys now throwing for 70%. The game has changed so dramatically, and I know it's a long time, but people like Joe Namath, Bob Greasy, Jim Hart would have a difficult time playing the way they played. I'm not saying they couldn't change, but playing the way they played in the 70s, Bradshaw too. I don't know that it'll be that easy for them to succeed in 2025.
Bubs, I like this as we're talking some football. Randy, what's your opinion on all these NFL teams going to indoor stadiums? I think the snow and the sub-zero temps are part of the NFL charm. Just ask those Chicago Bear fans who had the coldest game in Soldier Field history just this past weekend.
All right, let's start with the reality here. The reason that Indianapolis has their enclosed building, that Detroit, Minnesota, Kansas City wants a dome, Chicago wants a dome. It's so that they can get Final Fours, so that during the winter months they can use their stadium for other things, not the football part of it. Now, football teams specifically, I think there is something to be said if Chicago is smart, and I don't know how smart they are, for using Bears weather. The Bears under Mike Ditka used Bears weather to their advantage. And once we got to December and January in the playoffs, they were murder at home because it's such a hard place to play in the cold. Green Bay will never change. Green Bay is always going to be outdoors. But look at the NFC North. The Bears want a dome. Lions already have one. Vikings already have one. And then you have Green Bay. You have a lot of multi-purpose stadiums. It used to be a multi-purpose stadium was football and baseball. Now it's football and basketball. If I were the fan of a team in the northern climes, I would kind of prefer that they played outdoors. I would be watching on TV. I wouldn't be going to the games in the cold weather. I liked having a dome here, but in terms of wins and losses, I think because of all the teams that don't have outdoor stadiums, I think having an outdoor stadium, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, I think Buffalo is going to be outdoors still. The Green Bay, I think those teams will have a distinct advantage if they can have a good enough record to have home field in the playoffs.
I mean,
by the way, I do believe, I just want to say this. Part of the charm of the NFL is the outdoor stadium in the wintertime.
Yeah, I didn't get to go to a lot of them because, well, I was a Rams fan. So I agree with you that the aesthetic of them has always been incredible. I really only have one NFL stadium that in my life I really have to go to, and that would be Lambeau Field. So so part of that's the outside factor, it's the history factor, and so yeah, I agree. I agree to a point with Bubs. I think if I lived in a city with a football team, I'd be like, you know what? I kind of like the idea of a dome. I don't want to freeze 6 or 7 games every year. But if we're talking about the actual straight up aesthetics, and if I had to pick where I want to go see a game, a snow game in Lambeau Field is number 1 on my list.
By the way, we finally have Saturday games this weekend. One of my favorite things, once I knew the holidays were here, was back in the day when they started playing Saturday NFL games. And Budweiser had the awesome Clydesdales commercial, holiday greetings from Budweiser. And you'd be sitting in, and it'd be snowy outside and it'd be toasty inside, and you'd be watching Saturday NFL action. And I have never gotten away from that. It's this Saturday, you've got the Commanders and the Eagles, and then you've got Green Bay and Chicago. And those Saturday games will take me back to my childhood. I really enjoy the Saturday NFL games.
They always throw me off when they start, but I do love it. It does kind of give you a kind of it is kind of like a Christmassy feel almost. If you're like a died NFL fan, it's like, oh, we're close to Christmas because I'm getting Saturday games. This is fantastic. We have some non old school people here. Although I know Namu and the Lou is usually pretty old school. Last weekend in the cold, those fans in Chicago looked miserable. I think there were a lot of them having some fun out there, I thought. Skyboy does says, who wants to sit outside?
Matthew, the coldest I have ever been in my life was Soldier Field, 1979. O.J. Anderson in the last game of the season trying to win the rushing title, gets hurt in the first quarter, and Walter Payton goes crazy that day, winds up passing O.J. for the NFC rushing title, and the Bears beat the St. Louis Football Cardinals 42-6. And then that day, Dallas came back late in the game to beat Washington and knock Washington out of the playoffs. So the then Redskins lose in the final few moments of the game, and they lost the tiebreaker on points differential with something to do with the Cardinals and the Bears. And they blamed the Cardinals for laying down against Chicago. 42-6 was the final. Let me see if they have the game time temperature of that one. It was December 16th. So 1979. So it was the anniversary was yesterday. Doesn't have the time, but man, it was coldest I've ever been in my life was with the wind whistling off of Lake Michigan on that day at Soldier Field. Bud Wilkinson had been fired. Larry Wilson was the interim head coach of the Cardinals. Steve Pozarkowicz started at quarterback for the Cardinals. 29 degrees at game time with 19-mile-an-hour wind. So the wind chill was 16 miles an hour. It felt a lot colder than that, sir. And Steve Zarkowitz goes 5 of 28 for 65 yards, sacked 8 times by the Chicago defense. Jim Hart went 2 of 4. And OJ, 14 carries for 39 yards, as I mentioned, injured in the first half. He doesn't win the rushing title. Walter, 33 carries, 157 yards, 3 touchdowns, and Walter passes OJ to win the rushing title.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's incredible. Was it a Saturday game or a Sunday?
It was a Sunday. And the Bears wound up, so they go to the playoffs because of their 42-6 win and Washington's loss. What a day. I'll never forget it, though. That had to be my introduction to hand warmers.
That had to be an unbelievably painful day for Steve Zarkowitz. Oh, my God. Getting sacked 8 times by that defense in that weather, I imagine your body just kind of goes into shock at some point. Good God.
And the reason that Bud Wilkinson got fired is because he wouldn't start Zark. And Zark had been the Cardinals' #1 pick in 1977, and Bud Wilkinson wouldn't start him. And that's why Larry Wilson wound up coaching the team and starting Steve Zarkowitz. By the way, the Bears make it at 10-6, and Washington, that's what happened. Washington winds up missing the playoffs with a 10-6 record in that tiebreaker to the Bears. It was a wild day, and I'll never forget it. And those are the things. My dad drove me up there. He didn't have to drive me up there in the super cold weather. I think we spent the night in a hotel in Rockford, Illinois. And we were diehards. We were diehard Cardinal fans, and OJ was our guy. OJ Anderson, rookie year, had a chance to win the rushing title, and so kudos to my dad for taking me up there too.
Yeah, amen to that. Mr. Karraker kicking ass right there. And I know you've always been a big OJ Anderson fan, so that story makes a lot of sense to me. I'm just realizing now I don't think I've ever actually been to a professional football game where the outdoor, where this temperature, or even a college game where the temperature was below 32 degrees.
Oh, man.
I played in some when I was a little kid. I don't think I've ever watched one, though. And so I know for a fact that if I do eventually make it to Lambeau Field, the amount of layers that I will be wearing, because I am an absolute baby when it comes to the cold. I think it gets worse every year I get older. So the longer I wait, the layer I'm going to have to add by the time I actually get to Lambeau Field, I'm going to be like 6 or 7 layers in, because like the idea that you have to like bring cardboard to the Kansas City games or the Chicago game so your feet don't freeze to the concrete is a little bit terrifying, but I got to experience it at least once. It is pretty.
Lambeau is bleachers. Lambeau is aluminum bleachers. So my rule of thumb is to go to Lambeau before Halloween.
I know.
I think I've been there in November, and it was really, really cold.
Ralph Jenkins says, I agree with Randy on this topic. You play outdoor weather in cold football city. You have a great defense. The opposing offense has virtually no chance to score a lot of points.
Especially now, right, with all the dome games. And here's the thing, and this is why I'm concerned about the Bears leaning on Caleb Williams. Not that you can go through life with a terrible quarterback and win, but when you get to this time of year in Chicago, as much because of the wind as anything else, beyond the cold, it's hard to throw the ball successfully. They need to have a great ground game if they're going to win in Chicago, like they did when they won in 1985. And so I think Ben Johnson is really sharp, and I think they'll do that. They built the offensive line for it. They've got the rookie running back. But if I were an administrator for the Chicago Bears, and our old buddy Kevin Warren is their team president, former director of player programs for the St. Louis Rams under Dick Vermeil, but you got to build it for bear weather. There is such thing as bear weather, and you've seen the documentaries about the '85 Bears. You've got to build your team in Chicago for bear weather.
I mean, is it a coincidence that the two teams that made the Super Bowl are '85 and then '06? And I mean, we got in the defense, Lance Briggs, Brian Urlacher, Tommy Harris, Charles Peanut Tillman. They're the best defense in the league, at least in the NFC, because obviously the Ravens and the Steelers were messing around with some really good defenses in the AFC, but they're undeniably the best defense in the NFL, and they're playing a clean special teams. They got a running game going with Thomas Jones, And that's when they make their other Super Bowl, not with a great quarterback, not with a dominant offense, but with a running game on offense and a dominant Hall of Fame filled defense. They get to a Super Bowl that way. They win a Super Bowl. Obviously, we all know the 85 story. It can't be a complete coincidence. It can't be entirely coincidence that the 2 times the Bears have been successful is with great defenses and the fact that they never had a 4,000-yard passer. Like, these things all cannot be just correlation, not equaling causation. Some of this has to cross-reference and be an actual reason for why these things happen.
You are 100% correct. And this is why the Bears should always invest in they should invest in the trenches, invest in pass rushers and offensive linemen. What they did in not building their offensive line for such a long time was malpractice. That shows you, and I know Mel Kiper complains sometimes about how dumb NFL teams are in drafting quarterbacks. Well, the real reason, and I know you agree with this, the real reason that NFL teams are dumb is that they don't build offensive lines. It's almost like they learn their football from Stephen A. Smith, and they think, well, no, we just need skill position players. No, it all starts, as our old friend Dan Deerdorf said, football all starts on the offensive line, and it's about your big guys beating their big guys. If you have a good offensive line and you can run the ball and you can protect your quarterback, you're going to have a great chance of winning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't get how, to your point, I don't get how teams don't figure it out. It seems so obvious. They all say the cliche and that nobody follows it up. The Bengals are a great example. Yeah, they won a lot of games, but the longevity of that project was shortened by their inability to protect their quarterback. And Jamar Chase is still there. He's still great, but not a lot of it has mattered the last 2 or 3 years because they don't have an offensive line. That's just heck, Bubs points it out. I mean, you talk about consistency. There's a reason the Raiders are so bad. Their O-line is dog water, and that has been true since literally 2003.
And they don't know how to draft them either. That's a problem too. Is that Alex Leatherwood from Alabama and the left tackle that they wound up trading to New England. They've been through guys left and right. By the way, let's go back to the Bears for 1 second, because they've got an offensive line with Jonah Jackson at right guard. Darnell Wright was their left tackle. He's their right tackle now. They have an 80% new offensive line from last year. And that's and these guys can play with Benedetta at left tackle, and obviously the middle, Tooney, Dahlman, Jackson. It's a different group, and that's one of the reasons that they're winning. So that's a good way to look at it. I didn't realize, by the way, we got a chat talking about OJ's fumbling. I didn't realize OJ was as prolific a fumbler as he was, but he was.
There
10 in his rookie year.
I think in the Giants America's Team documentary on NFL Network, there's a whole thing because OJ is a big part of that one, and I think there's a whole thing about his fumbling issues in St. Louis and how he fixed it when he got to New York. Yeah,
after he got to New York, he only fumbled 3 times the rest of his career in 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 years.
I'm trying to,
but here fumbled 10 times in his rookie year, 5 in his second year, 13 in his third year, and then also 10 in 1983, and then cut down to 8 in 1984. So, yeah, he put the ball on the ground a little bit.
I'm trying to think if there's any connection between O.J. Anderson figuring out his fumbling problems in the early 90s with the Giants, and then 10 years later, they have Tiki Barber. He starts putting the ball on the ground like crazy, and he then gets a bunch of coaching and starts holding it really high and tight the rest of his career. And I feel like I don't know if I'm conflating this. I feel like there's like a story where Otis talked to Tiki when he was a young player because he was a giant and he was a giant. I feel like they might have crossed paths because of the fumbling issues early in their careers, but I might be conflating a story here. I'm not sure.
Well, I know with Otis, it was Bill Parcells saying, if you fumble, you're not going to play.
That'll do it.
Bill Parcells was big on ball security. With Tiki,
he was holding it like an idiot.
What?
He was holding it poor. He kept holding it like down by his like hip apparently, and that's why you saw Tiki Barber forever like it was like under his chin.
Yep. So Barber, just years 4 through 8 of his career, 9, 8, 9, and 9 fumbles. Tom Coughlin arrives, 5 fumbles, 1 fumble, 3 fumbles. Coaching, especially head coaching, guys that practice ball security and winning that turnover margin. That's the biggest part of winning in the NFL. That's why Marty Schottenheimer always won until he got to the playoffs. But why did Marty Schottenheimer have 200 wins as a pro coach? Because his teams always did the little things beyond the box score, winning the turnover battle, winning the penalty battle, things like that. Not doing things to lose games, and that's what the great coaches do. Vermeil did that here, by the way.
Craig Lewis, Jim Hart was a good quality quarterback for so many years because of his offensive line. He was no Roger Staubach, but he was able to perform well.
I am of the belief, and I'm not the only one, by the way, that if Jim Hart had landed with the Steelers, he would have the 4 Super Bowl rings. And if Terry Bradshaw had landed with the Cardinals, he would not have the 4 Super Bowl rings. Jim Hart was as good as anybody. Matthew, when he retired from the NFL, Jim Hart had the second most passing yards in the history of the league. Fran Tarkenton had 47,000. Hart had 34,000. Obviously, he's been passed because it's become a passing game. Jim Hart was really, really good. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. If he goes to the Raiders, if he goes to the Steelers, if he goes to the Dolphins, he wins Super Bowls with those teams. Same thing, by the way, with Dan Dierdorf. If Dan would have been the right tackle on the Raiders, or the right tackle on the Steelers, or the right tackle on the Dolphins, Dan would have Super Bowl rings. But we're talking about guys that played offense. We aren't saying that if most of the players on the Cardinal defense would have played for those teams, that they would have Super Bowl rings, because they wouldn't have been able to start for those teams. Maybe wouldn't have even been able to make those teams. The defense was the issue back in the day with the football Cardinals. But yeah, Hart was a first team All-Pro quality quarterback. He was beyond good quality. He was special, and he could really wing it. He could throw it as well as anybody.
Randy, yesterday, Doug Armstrong spoke. We're not going to dive into the blue side of this just yet. We're going to tell you guys about FanDuel, but I do want to put up one of Army's quotes really quick, and then read a text from a guy who's slowly becoming my favorite chatter on this whole show. Our good friend Henry says, if Dustin May pitches very well, he should be signed to an extension here. Same with Donovan. A long-term deal would be amazing. However, I trust whatever Bloom does. The Cardinals way will never die. Doug Armstrong, talking about the Blues, made what might be a quote I have to reuse for the rest of my entire broadcasting career. Hope is a bad strategy. And that not only that is such a perfect thing right now, I think, just for all St. Louis sports, which is hope's a bad strategy. It's nice to have, but when you talk about the guys making the decisions, it's not the idea or the mindset you want them to have. So we got a lot of chats, and heck, you and Bernie last night and your guys' live chat, some of the comments on the video after the fact are a lot of people, again, bemoaning, why are you so set on trading away Brendan Donovan? Because hope's a bad strategy. That's why we're set on trading Brendan Donovan. Bottom line.
There you go. All right. Hey, and we want you guys to know about DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, now live here in Missouri, and you can make every game even more exciting with same-game parlays and money lines and props and more, all from your phone, all safe and secure and easy to use. You know, Missouri fans know that game day is awesome, tailgates and the noise and the passion, and now with DraftKings Sportsbook, you can bring that same energy to every snap, every touchdown, and every win, especially with the playoff approaching. And right now, Missouri customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets instantly. There's no waiting, no nonsense, just pure action powered by America's top-rated sportsbook app. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code STL Sports. New Missouri customers bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets instantly. That's code STL Sports. The crown is yours in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 plus, physically present in Missouri. Eligibility and restrictions apply. Terms at DraftKings.com/sportsbook. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, Matthew, obviously, Doug Armstrong quite frustrated with the performance of his team. and he should be. But I also think that we need to take a step back and wonder how many NHL teams, if they lost 3 of their top 6 forwards, would be thriving. How many teams would be doing great if they lost the equivalent of Snuggerud and Kyrou and now Dylan Holloway? And by the way, it'd be interesting to go back and look how many games both Jordan Kyrou and Jimmy Snuggerud have been in the lineup together. It hasn't happened very often.
I mean, even Armstrong said it though yesterday when he was talking to JR and Luke Korak and all the other guys who were down there. I mean, they were a bad team before the injuries happened. This team isn't bad because of injuries. This team's bad because it's bad. Not to simplify it too much, but I mean, they were a pretty bad team before the injuries hit, and every underlying number says that nothing's gotten better, and it hasn't. And obviously it's not going to get better with all the players you're being out. But I mean, that's why I think. The discussions, one of the lines that he had to the writers is just kind of like, he doesn't expect deals to happen now, but he's listening to conversations and he expects team to kind of be waiting to see where they are at. And he doesn't want to pull the trigger yet, but I think everyone collectively is finally getting to that point where it's like, okay, it's decision-making time on whether or not this season's a real season or not. And I think most people in the decision-making process are starting to lean towards, we got to bag this thing up. It's not going to happen.
So then I guess what you're going to do then is kind of start at ground zero for Alexander Steen, which is, as we've talked about, that's a bad strategy for the Blues because people don't show up when the team is bad. We've seen that before. Here's the thing. People wanted to fire Doug Armstrong at this time in 2018. Then they go on and win the Cup. Last year at this time, they were a really bad team. We were talking about trading Braden Shen. We were talking about trading Jordan Kyrou. And then all of a sudden they turn it on. I don't know that these players have all of a sudden turned bad. Maybe they have. I don't know. But it seems to me that if you can get your players to play better, then you have a chance to win games. The goalies, especially Binnington, have not played particularly well this year. But it's hard for me to imagine that a group of players that can win 12 in a row against good teams and take the team that had the best record in the league last year in Winnipeg to double overtime of Game 7. Mm-hmm. I don't know how those young players turned bad so quickly.
Yeah, obviously, being a little tongue in cheek. I don't think the players turned bad. I just think it's hard to win games in pro leagues, and there a lot of little things happen, and it kind of all snowballs. And the Blues are trying everything they can. JR talked about it today on TMA. They changed the defense. They changed the entire defensive philosophy for how this team was playing after the first week or two, and the numbers haven't gotten that much better. Doug Armstrong was talking about responding to recent trade calls. He said, essentially, what's his response when he gets a phone call? We're certainly not pleased with where we're at. What are your ideas? That's essentially his hypothetical answer right now when he gets a phone call from another team. And he pointed out that, listen, when we're the successful team the last few years, the bad teams, which what we are now, are the teams we're calling right now and saying, hey, where are you at? You're testing the waters. You might not be making a deal now, but teams are clearly calling the Blues right now to try to make a deal for after the Olympics. Because that's another thing that JR laid out really well in his article, which is there's probably not going to be a deal before the first trade freeze, which happens on Friday, which is for the holidays. There probably won't be a deal prior to the Olympics because a lot of teams don't want to deal with having that extra money on their cap for those 3 weeks where they're not playing any hockey. So right now, everyone's just testing the waters to try to see what might be available and what might be best when things finally come around post-Olympic break. So I don't know if we're going to see a deal till then.
Who do you think needs to go?
I don't know if needs is the answer to the question, Randy. I think it's who's possible to get moved. And JR laid out Falk, Schenner, and Binnington because Falk's playing a little bit better. Schenner obviously has the leadership and the grit side of things without having a huge contract. Binnington, obviously, a lot of teams think good of him because they know in the big games he plays. And again, Falk's having a better season than he was at the start of the year. So, those are the feasible ones. All those guys, Shen and Falk have 15 team no trades. Bennington has a 14 team no trade, I think is the breakdown. So they have a lot wider of a scope they can cast. And so I think it's less about who needs to go and who could go. And I think those are the answers right now.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting that Armstrong said what he needs to get back are people that are in that same age group as Neighbors and Holloway and Broberg, that 23-year-old range. He said, we don't need draft picks. So I don't get the sense that he wants to go down to ground zero. But then you look around at the teams that have been interested in the past in people like Braden Shen, and I'm not seeing a lot of high quality, and maybe he doesn't need high quality. I'm not seeing a lot of 23-year-old guys. Maybe you can get a 23-year-old goalie back for Bennington. And Doug Armstrong has worked trade magic in the past. I'll just be interested to see what sort of return the Blues can get, and if they can prevent having to go down to ground zero by trading these guys with what they get back.
And here's the quote that Randy's referring to right to the right of your screen. Future first-round picks don't do that group that I'm talking about a lot of good. And to Randy's point, the group he's talking about is the Neighbors, the Snuggerudes, the Mayus, the Hofers, that age group. But that is an asset that you use at a later date to get a player in that age group. So we have to be open to anything. Our goal would be, if we acquire things, they have a name attached to them now, not a number, as in a draft pick number. But to his point, if you do trade away players and get first-round picks, the opportune use of those first-round picks, because you're getting them from playoff teams who are trading for Justin Falk or Jordan Pennington, will then be to package those first-round picks to get players in that age group. So I like that he's leaving the opportunity open and saying that, yes, if teams offer us first-round picks, which we don't really want right now in the back end of the first round, we'll still take the deal because we have to have assets in the future to continue to make those moves. And I think that also tells you a lot about where he thinks this roster is right now, which is he's probably thinks to himself, I'm not going to leave this in the best spot for Alexander unless I find some moves to make.
Yeah. Now, one last thing here before we wrap up. I still wonder how much of this team's lack of success early, and you mentioned that they were playing bad even when they had their guys. I wonder if they ever really emotionally recovered from losing that game to Winnipeg. I don't think they did.
Yeah.
I think that messed with their heads.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. Absolutely. I think that broke players. We see it all the time. We see it more with like the Super Bowl losers, and they talk about how it's so hard when you spend that entire season getting all that way to fall forward. Now you have the shortest offseason than anybody else in the NFL, and you have to redo it all. Again, it's different for the Blues, but maybe the fact that they made the playoffs on that run and then lost the way they did, and they have to say to themselves, I mean, what if we get to a slow start, guys? We got to win 17 straight again, and then we got to do that in the playoffs again. We don't even get to go to round two. I think they're right. There is a mental block, especially with all the young players on this team. I think that's definitely can play into it.
Yeah. If you don't like it, play better. That's all.
There you go.
It's pretty easy.
Always solid.
Great job. You're at the Billikens tonight?
Yes, Billikens facing off against Bethune-Cookman. The Tigers had a close game against Bethune. Shouldn't have been. So hopefully the Billikens can continue to roll teams in Chaffetz, because that's really been the modus operandi so far this year.
All right. We'll do this again tomorrow, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Randy Karraker.
Matthew Rocchio, Randy Karraker, Wilson got us on the air. Thank you for being a part of it. And you can always see us on STL Sports Central. We were presented by DraftKings, where the crown is yours. We'll see you next time.